Unfortunately, this speech comes with a warning. It's going to get a little sad. Times might get a little dicey. But if you stick with me, we'll make it through it, and I promise you it will get better. One particular night in March of this past year, I was laying in bed. I was tossing and turning, and I couldn't sleep. And when I could get a little bit of sleep, I would wake up from these horrible, chaotic dreams. And I just knew that there was something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know what it was. The next day, exhausted, I tried to go into work, and I was too tired to function. So I came home, plopped down on the couch, and I fell asleep. What seemed like just a few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. So I got up. I was groggy and disoriented still, and opened the door, and I was met by two sheriff's deputies and this young woman. And one of the deputies asked me, "Are you Tim Burfield?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he asked, "Do you own a white Acura?" I said, "Yeah, I own it. It's registered in my name. It's my son Kyle's car. What's going on?" And he asked, "Could we come in and talk with you for a few minutes?" Hesitantly, I invited them in, and the four of us sat down. That same deputy, he looked down at his shoes, took a breath, and he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Burfield, I'm so sorry, but there was an accident last night, and unfortunately, your son Kyle passed away." Then he went into little detail. The car was traveling at high speed, it left the freeway, and it rolled into the desert. Of course, I had no words. I didn't want to believe it. And then they introduced the young woman. She was from the examiner's office. And I can't remember everything she said, but she described Kyle, she described injuries. And when she was done, I had no doubt left in my mind that my son was gone. At this point, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. And I didn't know how to feel. But what I did start to feel was my body start to tremble, and I was going into shock. I scanned the faces of these three. I don't know what I was looking for, but I noticed they were looking at me intently, and I think they were trying to make sure whether or not I was going to crack. And I guess once they figured I wasn't going to, at least then, they left, and I was all alone. Or so I thought, because very soon I was visited by a thought that hit me so hard and without any mercy. It was, "You knew something was wrong last night. What's wrong with you? This is your fault. You should have known. You could have called. You could have called your sons and just checked. You're guilty. You're to blame." And with this thought still bludgeoning me in the head, it was now my charge to call the rest of my family and tell them what had happened. First, I called my wife, and I broke it to her that she would never hold her youngest child again. I called my son Mason and told him, "Your little brother he's gone. You're never going to see him again." Finally, I called my parents, and on a rare occasion, it was my dad who answered the phone. And I heard him crushed under the weight of the news that I had for him. All these people that I loved and I was supposed to protect, and not only had I failed Kyle, but now I had failed them as I called, and I shattered their worlds. And as for myself, the one thing I always thought I got right or took the most pride in was being a dad. I thought I did it right. And now, to me, that was gone. My 19-year-old son was gone, and there was not a thing in the world I could do about it. The following days, I was overcome with grief and anger and guilt and this hollow sadness that was so deep and profound that it was like I was just hollowed out as a human being. I still can't describe it to this day. And it didn't matter how many times I punched and broke something. It didn't matter how many times I would sneak off and scream into my pillow until my lungs hurt so bad afterwards that it hurt to breathe. I could not drink enough, smoke enough, hate enough to silence these this swarm of thoughts that kept coming into my mind that told me, here's all the things that you should have done and didn't do. Here's the things that you did do and should have done better. Here's all the time that you could have spent with your son and didn't. All these things you will never be able to make up to him now. It's too late and you failed. So I told you this was not going to be easy. It was going to be rough. But stick with me. It gets better. Through all this, my wife Jamie and my son Mason, it drew us closer together. And we made a pact. And it was okay to cry. It was okay to laugh. It was even okay to joke. It was okay to share whatever you felt, and whatever you felt was all right. And it got a little better. We held a celebration of life for Kyle, and we found ourselves surrounded by support from family and friends, and for me, some people I didn't know, strangers, that were willing to share this pain and shoulder some of the weight of it with us. There were family members that had driven 12 hours or more to be there. There were coworkers of mine that showed up that I never expected to see, and I would have thought nothing less of them for if they never did show up. It was completely unexpected. Even the ex-mayor of the city, a guy I'd met a handful of times, was there. He was there, tears in his eyes. And I looked at all these people that had shown up in just the love and support. And I felt something a little different. It was gratitude. I was grateful for them. We had a microphone set up at the front of the room, and we asked anybody that had memories of Kyle that they wanted to share to please come up and share them with us. And he had a couple of his friends that would come up, and they would talk about something funny that Kyle had done, how he told a joke in class, or how they always laughed at lunch together, or things like that that he had done. He had a middle school teacher, old middle school teacher, come up and tell the story about a play that they were putting on. And although Kyle's part that he played was not written this way, he insisted on playing it in a dress, doing the voice of an old woman, because he thought it would be funnier. And I remember the play, and it was. He had another couple friends come up, and they talked about how they had been going through something rough in their lives, and that Kyle was there for them, and he cared, and he listened, and he would even call out of the blue and follow up and make sure they were still doing all right. So there were these things that I learned about my son that day that I may never have learned any other way, and I was grateful. I've always been very proud of both of my sons. But on this particular day, hearing the kind of person that Kyle was, and how caring he was, and how he helped other people, and seeing all the people that showed up, and seeing the impact that this young man had in just 19 short years of life, I found myself overcome with pride. And there was something else. I felt this little spark, and I was sad, but this little spark was happiness, and it came from gratitude. I was grateful for my family and everyone that showed up, but I was so grateful that I got to be Kyle's dad. I was grateful for the 19 years I had with him, and I was grateful for the young man he'd become. And in all that, I thought just maybe I was wrong. Maybe I could forgive myself too. And so now what I try to do is practice gratitude. And it's not easy, and it's certainly no magic bullet. And it has to be practiced. But if you do this, there are studies that will show that gratitude combats negative emotions like sadness. It blunts stress hormones like cortisol. It can even improve your health. It's been shown to lower blood pressure. So, again, gratitude. So, I hope you're still with me. And I sincerely hope that anyone who sees this that is maybe struggling with a loss in their lives, that's got some tragedy or something that's befallen them, that maybe they'll be inspired to find and practice gratitude themselves. Thank you.